Hello, 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 and welcome to the Sprinklr Coffee Club. I'm your host, Marshall Kirkpatrick, and I am so excited to have a wonderful, incredible guest here for another episode of Sprinklr Coffee Club. We here on the Sprinklr Coffee Club like to talk about digital transformation, customer experience, the implications of technology on society, the pitfalls, the opportunities, and these days, we're doing Coffee Club from home because of the global pandemic. And so every conversation that we're having is coming back to that and what we are seeing different companies and individuals around the world do in response to our shared challenge and these difficult times. So thank you very much for joining us. I am excited to introduce our guest this week. Wesley Faulkner is a longtime developer relations marketer today at MongoDB. I've had the pleasure to get to hang out with Wesley a few times in person back in the old days when you could do that. But we're very pleased to have you with us here today virtually. Wesley, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Marshall. I'm happy to be here. Good to see you virtually.
It is good, isn't it? Wesley, I am excited to share some of your wisdom and experience and insights with the Sprinklr Coffee Club community. But I wonder if you might start by perhaps expanding on the introduction that I offered, telling us a little bit about your career and what developer relations means to you, especially to those folks who are outside of that practice themselves.
Okay. Well, my background is that I used to work as an engineer for Dell for about 6 years, working on high-end storage. And then I moved to AMD. I was a product development engineer there for their consumer software products. And then after that, I was there for about 5.5 years. After that, I switched to do social media marketing. While I was at AMD, I was part of their social media council to help get that up and running. And I caught the bug and I decided to go full bore in that direction. So I did marketing for about a decade after that. And then I was approached by a colleague or a person in the loop in social media who worked for IBM, and they were looking to get up and running their developer relations effort, and they knew that my background was extremely technical, and also I had a marketing background, so I seemed ideal for that role. And so I started my trek into developer relations at IBM. And so let's talk about what that means. And I'm going to do more of a giant umbrella pitch of what is developer relations rather than what my role was specifically for IBM. So developer relations, and this is an ultimate engineer definition, is it depends. So as we move into more of a knowledge-based economy, where goods and service are less physical and tangible, but more whatever you want as a service is what people are selling. The goal is to get usually a company to adopt that if you're a traditional marketer. So you tout the good things about it, you give your sales pitch, and they say, oh, that checks all the boxes, and they implement that. For a more technical audience, underneath like a CTO or a chief engineer at a company, what's important to them is that the tool that their engineers or their employees or the developers can actually use it. So usability, when we think of it, is like being able to click on the thing and it makes sense. But when you're talking about a highly technical product for engineers or developers, you need to make sure that the documentation is up to date. You want to make sure that it can be implemented using the technology that you're already using in-house, or replaces a technology in sufficient manners, that you can integrate it into your code base, that you're able to tweak it. Because unlike a product, like if you're buying a car, you want to make sure, hey, does it have four-wheel drive? No four-wheel drive. Does it seat so many passengers? And you're off and running. But products for developers, it's like that car, except for every single car, you have to read the manual extensively and be able to understand not only how to drive the car, but take it apart if you need to, or new things if you need to. And so the requirement isn't just, okay, I buy it. I use, like, people who buy Office, they use 20% of the product. With a technical product, you pretty much need to not just adopt it, but be almost an expert in it. And so the level of quality and the level of specificity that you have to do in order to sell that product to that audience is extremely high. So for developer relations, what it is not just being able to sell a product, but to answer those technical questions, understand how other customers have taken it apart or bolted on their own thing. Because just like a consumer who would just buy a car and use it, the products for developers and software architects, it is meant to be taken apart, put together, and refactored, because their use of that product is going to be unique. Because you don't want to buy something and just put your name on it like a white label product and sell it again. You have to customize it. So when in developer relations needs to find those people, needs to be able to talk to those people, and needs to be able to address their specific concerns and do that in a manner that is super approachable. Because if you're seen as a marketer, you're seen as being a person who's only knows that high level knowledge and not the really bare metal, being able to take off the rivets and put it back together again. And so you need to find a good balance between both of those.
Oh, that's fantastic. What an excellent explanation, and how inspiring. So tell us a little bit about how you do it. What's the Wesley Faulkner secret sauce, or your what do you like to bring to that practice in particular?
As I mentioned before, I started off in marketing as a social media marketer, or really moving into this role. And I think a lot of the elements of that still apply in terms of doing a lot of things that don't scale, is a way to really connecting. Adding things that do scale is also connecting. But making sure that you talk at every single level. So marketers usually stay at the high end unless they do like a white paper, and you're like, this is for our technical community, so they're going to digest this ebook white paper kind of a thing. You have to find a way of when you present, because a lot of developer relations is going to conferences. So you have to find a way to either present to your community or that whole spectrum, so that everyone who is hearing your message can lock on to that one point and still feel like they can come in and it's not overly technical. Because no matter how technical your audience, it could be someone who is super technical on one language and not technical on this whole new thing. And so they could be super smart, but you could be talking something that is just a little outside of what they're an expert in. Like the manual example, they might be super deep, but not not very wide in their knowledge. They might spike on one thing, like they could be a front-end developer, which is a lot different than a back-end developer, which is a lot different than a mobile developer and an enterprise developer. So the tools are different, the structures are different, the way you deploy is different. So you have to be able to mix your content, hopefully in the same speech, blog post, or what medium you're using to communicate with your users, so that everyone can find of what they can lock on to with your content instead of disregarding it outright.
That ability to tell multiple stories all at once, from a developer relations perspective, brings to mind something I read recently from McKinsey, who argued that company leaders who focus on the benefit of an initiative to a company are only effective at reaching the highest motivation of about 20% of their teams, and that in their experience there are five roughly equal central sources of motivation that people throughout organizations are driven by. Good for the company is one, individual career impact and self-interest is the second, impact on your coworkers and team is the third, then impact on your customers is the fourth, and impact on society is the fifth. About 20% of people are most motivated by an impact on society story. And so in order to motivate everyone to support an initiative, McKinsey argues, leaders need to be able to tell all five of those stories all at once. And it sounds like there's a similar level of juggling and blending that's required in developer relations.
Yes. But going back to that engineering answer, it depends. For instance, let's say you're working on an open source project. And so you're highly indexed on social good, more so than making money or personal development. But let's say you are an enterprise SaaS product that does accounting or something like that, where you're making more impacts on back-end changes that the end customer may not see, but it helps with a business being more nimble or makes things automated, that processes that were more manual. And so you're helping these companies, which helps the companies, depending on the sector, make more money, which for you, that might be more of a motivator. And team culture, there are some people who are extremely introverted and very only concerned about themselves, to the point where it doesn't matter who on their team, or they work solo. So there's in terms of what roles and how much those are indexed, it is just like the product, depends on the section of the market you're targeting, and in terms of the people that you're building up that work. A highly motivated, like community-driven project is also extremely indexed on recognition. So personal praise and reputation within the community, which instead of money, that's a different kind of currency. Same with virtual badges and that other types of recognition, even being in the comments or being in the credits of a product.
Interesting. So I feel like there are any number of lessons that marketers outside of developer relations could learn from that. But before we move to that, I want to ask you about this current moment, about the COVID-19 pandemic and how it is how it's impacting you professionally and what in your industry. I'm real curious what perhaps some of the best things you're seeing around the developer relations market are in response to the situation, and how you're thinking about it.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of audiences that I would like to speak to. One is on the corporate side, those providing this type of service, and those on the consumer side. So I'm going to start with the consumer first. One, more people are at home, so they don't have a commute, and that frees up some time and allows them to explore things that they haven't done before. Like if they wanted to learn a new programming language, there are now a lot of free courses that companies like mine are opening up. There is an advantage of not having the constraint in some areas of bandwidth caps that they would contend with before, where they couldn't download things or stream a lot of video without incurring a heavy financial penalty from their ISP. They are also, I would say, remote work in general. I think we all have been moving in that direction. And there is a skill set that people and a muscle that people are building right now. And I think that is a really good skill. And it's something that I think as companies are more aware that working from home is important, they'll probably not make it so mandatory to go in every day because of the efficiency increases with not having a commute. But now on the good thing on the side of the corporations, one, there is a strong focus for this content right now. So where it might have been harder in the past to say launch a podcast, it gives us the ability to be able to push those efforts quicker, and also to use other more creative ways like TikTok to get on those platforms, and also explore other webinar platforms, and to be able to get those tools. So it's a lot easier to get that done and provide that content for all those eyeballs that are sitting at home. So it's in some cases it is truly a captive audience. Bad joke, but but people are at home. People are looking for content. Some people are at home who are looking to switch careers, especially if you're in a career that is more affected. If you're not in the knowledge-based economy, you're stuck at home with nothing to do. And so being able to talk to that group, approach them about here's how you transition to a new role, a new career, is a great advantage for us, because not only are people interested, but they are seeking it out. So even things that aren't COVID-19 targeted, some of our documents, some of our blog posts, a lot of them are still getting an uptick, instead, not just the one that are specifically addressing this virus situation right now.
Mm-hmm.
The negative side for this is that just like that muscle on the end of getting used to working from home, a lot of us are making the mistakes of running a virtual event. Figuring out how we coordinate people. How do we reteach all the people who were going to physical events to use a virtual environment? The speakers that we would have, they don't necessarily have a webcam or a mic or even the bandwidth to do virtual events, or even if they wanted to buy some, they're out of stock in a lot of places. So if they weren't prepared before, they may not be able to get prepared. On the side of the consumer, the bad side is like they are dealing with a lot of stress. Things aren't the same. Things are getting worse almost every day, depending on where you're looking. And people are trying to contend with paying their bills and realizing that when we go back to the way things were, their job is gone, their loved ones are gone, and they don't know what the landscape will look like. And so even though we're trying to provide hope as a corporation and saying like, here's some tools to help you prepare to transition, it's just not the same as learning in any other environment before.
Well said.
Thanks.
Well said. Wesley, speaking of learning, let's conclude with this, if we may. I'm wondering, what would you advise marketers at large to learn from the world of developer marketing and developer relations?
Yeah, I would say prepare for the integration. I think as a social media marketer, we all saw that you could be a social media marketer and start off and understand that all of the complications, like then you have to be able to be a designer to be able to stand up a landing page, or to make sure that the UI is correct so that people can actually click on your call to action. You want to make sure that you are able to make UTM tracking so you can start following your leads, and to make sure that when you work with IT and your web team and then you have to do analytics and reporting. So realize that when right now, if developer relations is something that they want to incorporate, right now is the right time to do it before these bolt-ons come. As we move to a more knowledge economy, in general, you hear that every company is a technology company these days. So which means that developer relations is going to come to your company. So get started now when the load is easier, and make your mistakes now before the tools come to fix everything, because you'll get inundated, just like people are trying to fix fix their current conferences by making it virtual instead of in person. There's a lot of things that they have to learn. So building their muscle now will help them get to that speed. There are two ways that you can start developer relations. You could be a who learns more about engineering, or you can be an engineer that learns more about marketing. I was lucky that I came at it both ways, but don't rule out people coming from non-traditional backgrounds. People who did stand-up comedy, playwrights, geologists, people who were mechanics. They have a certain skill set and a mindset that will be able to break down and understand the guts of something and be able to approach it from that respect. So a lot of skill sets actually lend themselves to developer relations. The mechanic can take things apart. He can understand, or she can understand, like how things fit together. A playwright can figure out how sections get glued together and how to merge and transition between each of those sections. Same with artists. A geologist sometimes has to catalog their findings or put in a way that's easily presentable or researched, or being able to reference that. So there are a lot of different professions that lend themselves to developer relations. And so whenever you're starting this area, don't have too many perceived notions of who would be a good person for this role.
Oh, fantastic. That's inspiring to think about. What a increasingly democratized future for marketing and developer relations. I love that, and I really like the focus on detailed documentation as well. That feels like something all of us could do, whether we were working in developer relations or not. We could draw some inspiration from that and add value to our customers' lives through developer relations inspired depth of documentation.
Yeah, and just approaching it from a way that you don't know what level the person is, and so make sure that you are able, when they click a link and they land on that documentation or blog post, that they're able to go down the rabbit hole if they need to get more information. If they're a young learner, or they feel like it's concise enough to understand the concepts of something if they're a more experienced user.
That's a great tip. Great tip. Wesley, if people watching Sprinklr Coffee Club today want to follow along with your learning and communication and community going forward, what's the best way to do so?
Well, I'm on the web generally as Wesley83. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Wesley83 on Twitter. And on LinkedIn, I'm linkedin.com/n/Wesley83 if you want to look at my profile.
Nice. That's wonderful. Well, I feel like I have learned a bunch in this conversation, and I really appreciate it. I'm excited to share this with all the members of our community, and it's great to be in touch. I hope that you and your family and your coworkers can stay safe and healthy here in this time. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and talk to us.
Thank you for having me. I would love to touch you again too. So nice to be in touch.
Right on. Yeah. Hug you soon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us here at the Sprinklr Coffee Club. Please give a like to the YouTube channel here and subscribe for subsequent conversations. But we hope that you found today's informative and fulfilling. I know I certainly did, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day. Stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. Thank you very much.